Hello, my name is Dr. Dicken Bettinger, longtime three principles practitioner, studied with Sydney Banks directly for 23 years, licensed psychologist, retired my license, still running seminars in the principles around the world. And I tested positive for the coronavirus. For 17 days, I experienced fever, nonstop headaches, body aches stronger than I've ever felt before. I had a allergy cough before I got the virus, and it made it worse and created an asthmatic reaction. And during those 17 days, I had absolutely no energy. I slept probably 10 hours a night, and I slept 4 to 6 hours during the day. It was hard just to stand up and move. Oh man, I've never gone through anything so physically debilitating, including the worst case of flu I've ever had. And on morning of the 18th, I woke up, stood up out of bed, and was completely symptom-free. And I had all of my life energy back. As a matter of fact, I had so much energy, I took a 10-minute walk down to our beach and just stood there filled with gratitude. It's the first time I'd been out of the house in about a month. First time I'd gone for a walk in over 3 weeks. So, well, I wanted to tell you a little bit about how understanding the principles served me. During my illness, a good friend of mine says, well, at least you have that quiet, peaceful place inside of you that you can so easily go to. And for the first time in 40 years, I could not find a quiet, peaceful place. I experienced nothing but great physical discomfort. So it wasn't like I used the principles during that time period. But what I realized later was during the time I was sick, I had very little thinking about my illness. Very little thinking about it. I just experienced it without adding another layer of, oh, this is horrible, I can't stand that. Oh, trust me, I did this sometimes, but I wasn't living there. It was just, oh, I wasn't in the story of this is horrible, I can't stand this, how long this is gonna last, oh, this is horrible, oh, I feel so bad. And I just felt that without much story. In other words, I didn't add more psychological suffering to the physical suffering that I was going through. And I'm really grateful for that because I realized that that made a big difference in terms of how I went through it. I became acutely aware of the difference between experiencing directly this moment as it is and thinking about this moment and living in the experience of that thinking and that story. So when I would start thinking about myself or my illness, it took a lot of energy and it wasn't helpful, wasn't necessary. It was just making me feel worse. My story was worse than my circumstance. So I didn't do a lot of inner dialogue, inner storytelling, what Sid Banks called personal thinking. I attribute that to the level of understanding I went into the illness with, because that was becoming more and more true for me in my life. But let me tell you about after the symptoms went away. It seems to me like for the first 4 days, I had no personal mind. I just lived fully in my senses in the moment, just seeing such clarity, seeing with such clarity, seeing beauty everywhere I looked. And my mind was wide open. So I felt this sense of spacious presence. And in that presence, always in every moment, was this deeper feeling of just being alive. No story, no particular feeling, although it was very primary, was a nice, as Sid Banks says, there's really no word in the English language for that feeling, love, peace, joy, because it's so much deeper than that. It's so much purer. It's what Sid called pure consciousness, awareness uncontaminated by our conceptual mind, by our personal thinking. For 4 days, I walked around and saw beauty and felt deep gratitude just for this moment as it is, just for aliveness. And I loved going for walks then. Looking at a tree was intimate. Looking at the water glinting off the ocean was overwhelmingly beautiful. Hearing the birds, it's spring here in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, and hearing the birds, oh, such beautiful music. And looking at Koizi with no filter, just such deep presence and love. At the end of 4 days, I could actually hear my thinking starting to kick in again. But I was so tuned in to the difference between pure presence and thinking about my life that when I would start thinking about my life, I would just recognize the nature of that and fall back wide open again and just look around. And that beauty and presence and spaciousness and deeper feeling was foreground immediately. Just such deep gratitude for being alive and for life and for this moment as it is. So there's nothing more practical than a realization of the nature of the principles. It keeps bringing you back to pure thought, not holding any story in mind. That's pure thought. What Sid called the state of no thought, bringing me back to pure consciousness, which is just awareness that's unfiltered by our own story. And then pure mind is just this feeling of intimacy and connection with whatever is in front of us. So I wanted to just share my story with you and my reflections about the benefit and value and practical nature of realization of the principles.